Today, we're going to speak to a top producer who became an agent at the age of 50 and is crushing it. And we want to tell you exactly how she's doing it. Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, on to our show. Hey, podcast listeners, are you trying to figure out how you can actively prospect on Instagram to grow and expand your existing community without feeling like you need more followers or more people in your database? Well, Michelle Berman-Michael, who I've interviewed on this show, has not only given hope to those who feel overwhelmed by Instagram, but has also created a strategy that will teach you how to create killer content without needing a videographer, how to prospect using Instagram in minutes, not hours, and how to get more engagement without posting every day. Now, this program is called Beyond the Method, and it will show you exactly how to master Instagram so that you can generate more real estate business. Keeping It Real podcast listeners get a 10% discount on the program, but only if you visit igcourse.com. That's igcourse.com. And now, on to our show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I am your guide and host through the show. And in just a moment, we're going to be speaking with top producer Julia Stauffer. Before we get to Julia, we want to welcome you if you're new to this podcast. Of course, welcome back if you are not new. We appreciate all of our listeners. And the best way that you can help us continue to grow and do episodes is by telling a friend. Think of one other agent that could benefit from hearing top producer interviews like the one we're about to do with Julia. So please let them know about our show. We appreciate you. And leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show and ways in which we could improve the show to better suit your business and your needs, because it is for you. So let's just get right to it, guys. My conversation with top producer Julia Stauffer. Today, our guest is Julia Stauffer with McDonald Realty in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, of course. Let me tell you more about Julia. Now, Julia is an award-winning agent with McDonald Realty in beautiful West Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. She fell into the insurance industry at a young age, but she never felt quite right there. I bet a lot of people who jump into insurance early on probably don't. My dad, same thing, didn't feel quite right. She was always the more out there person at the insurance company. But 25 years later, when her daughter was headed for university, full of inspiration, she promised herself she would have a new career by her 50th birthday. She made the change carefully, and 9 years later, as a realtor, has never looked back. Through crafting great connections and building relationships, she's created a business that she loves, combines her attention to detail and business background with her love of marketing and creativity. I want everybody to follow Julia on Instagram, which you can find her at juliastauffer.ca. We will have a link to that in the show notes. It's STAUFFER.ca. So juliastauffer.ca. And also, that's her website as well, juliastauffer.ca. And I really encourage you to take a look at her website. I particularly like the design and look of it. Julia, thanks for being on the show.
Hi, DJ. Thanks very much for having me. I just kicked my table. That's awesome.
Well, I knock things all over all the time here, and guests probably are like, "What's that big loud crashing sound?" And oh, I usually don't even address it. I just kind of plow forward. But I'm excited because I think so many people get into real estate as a second career, or an alternative career, or they start in real estate as a part-time agent when they're doing something else, and they eventually transition. But I love that you sort of had a clean break and at 50. So tell us that story. Like, how did you get into real estate?
Well, yeah. So as you said in my little introduction there, yes, a lot of people fall into. I was one of those people in high school who just, we're leaving high school. Oh my gosh, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I have no idea. And so, when you don't have any plan in your head, you just sort of end up falling. And that's what I ended up doing. So through a mutual connection, just fell into the insurance industry. And in the beginning of my insurance industry, I actually fell into like road service, auto, driving around. We had a little territory with another gal, and it was very much, I sort of felt it wasn't real insurance. Like it was just kind of fun and when you're 20, right? And we had salespeople we had to keep happy, and it was a very fun, and we got to do whatever we wanted, and so that was really fun. And in your early 20s, that was a great, great. It was a great career, and we made good money. I was totally on commission at that point, so it was, that was my intro to sort of business. But you get a little bit older. We were going to get married, and I thought, if I'm going to be in this insurance thing, I better get into some real insurance. So get into an office, do some personal insurance, like learn real insurance. But around that time, we got married in the next year, and I never went back to work full time after that. So my daughter was born, and I worked 3 or 4 days a week, and went from personal insurance and then ended up in one of the biggest insurance brokers in the world, actually, doing commercial insurance with really large mining companies. Or Vancouver is a really headquarters for mining in the world, actually, and worked with some massive companies. And it was I enjoyed the people that I worked with. But the business, every time I tried to, I worked with some of the top people in as sort of the helping backstage person, but I would always could take me to meetings because I was good with people. But it was when, some younger people came in and they wanted me to do just the spreadsheets and not go to the meeting. I'm like, ooh, I'm not very good at those spreadsheets. I prefer the contact. So, so I started realizing as my daughter was, heading toward leaving high school and going to university, she was making all these plans. And I thought, you know what, I think, if I'm going to make a leap, I've got to plan it now. And it's got to be, I don't want to have that cake at my desk at the insurance office. I need to be somewhere else by the time that happens. So that was the plan. And the question, real estate. I mean, obviously, everybody, especially in Vancouver, real estate is something that everyone's interested in. It's it's a fun industry, obviously, and so it was something that had always been in the back of my mind. I'd done sort of creative things. I actually took a broadcast journalism course when I was about 28. So creativity and that sort of thing was always, I'd always sort of looked for little paths to try to break out. But insurance is a very stable, well-paying career, and it's hard to break out. That's for sure. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you
but
sort
I'd
of
always been sort of looking for these little avenues to sort of have these little creative outlets. So
Well, it's interesting because you really went from a steady income to an unsteady income, right, in real
right,
estate, and
yeah,
that it takes a tremendous amount of courage. I know obviously a lot of our listeners have taken that plunge as well,
yeah.
and it's a tough one.
I
Um,
actually did navigate 2 years of part because I was working part time. I
yeah,
was only working 3 days a week, and so I was able to when I first started. So I was showing up on the days I wasn't at work at the office, and then
sure,
everyone was leaving the office, and I was coming into the office because it
yeah.
was 5 o'clock, and so I did navigate a couple of years of that, but it was yeah. but I loved it. So people I worked with were saying, well, aren't you tired? Like, you're working here and then you're working there. I'm like, oh yeah, but you don't understand, that work doesn't feel like work, because you get to do it at your own pace. In the office, I always felt like I was in the office and I was getting paid by the hour. Like, it's the time you spend,
Yeah.
not working on something that you just work through it, and then you cut to the other side. There was something so satisfying about the process in real estate
Well, let's talk
that
about
was one
that.
of the main things.
So you got your license, you had been working, training, and how did you go about starting to shift the people in your life who hopefully would ultimately end up, using you or at least recommending you to people? How did you start to transition people to start seeing you as the commercial insurance, person over to real estate?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that I worked with, always saw me as sort of the very sort of a little bit more out there. So when I started doing that, people were like, "Oh, that makes sense for you to do something like that." I mean, it just made sense. So a lot of people that I worked with were really happy for me and sort of supported me, not necessarily in transactions right away. I've got to say that transitioning at 50 is a difficult time to use your sphere, because most people that it's not like in your
They were
20s
already
where
in their forever home.
that's right.
Yeah.
They haven't bought. They're not buying their first condo. They're not. Everybody's sort of in a place where it's difficult. So your own sphere is very difficult. But a lot of support as far as joining me on social media, following me, all of those sorts of things. They were very, very supportive in that way. I was very lucky that my brother was always in the branding space, so he was able to help me sort of get my nameplate together, get my website, not the one I have now, but my original website together, and really kind of gave me a really good look and feel that I was comfortable with. So I didn't have to struggle with that, which is, I know that's something that agents really struggle with in the beginning, like having a uniform look and an identity. So I was really lucky from that perspective that my brother sort of helped me have something clean to start with, and I could run with that. So yeah, so and landing at the right brokerage, that is key, right? So I'd come from a insurance industry, very male dominated, and in BC, right before I decided to take the real estate course, it went from a 1 month do-it-yourself course to a very long process. Actually, like 9 months, I think, where you have to do all sorts of steps, and it changed right before I decided to do it, which was quite interesting. But yeah, so then you get to the other side, and now what? Where am I going to go? So I've got this list of all the brokerages that I'm going to have to visit to figure out where I'm going to land, because that's so important, right?
Yeah, and a lot of agents really, probably to their detriment, just go with the first brokerage that they talk to, right? Because it can be very exciting. I just passed my exam. I want to,
Yeah.
get into it, and then they find out, 6 months down the road, ooh, there's other opportunities. So,
Well, it's
um,
funny you should say that, actually, because I was drawn to McDonald Realty for some reason. There was a video, and the director of our agent development, who's been with McDonald Realty for over 25 years. Mark will correct me if I'm wrong on that. He had a video on there about joining McDonald Realty, and he's British, and I have that British background, and I immediately connected with that, and I thought it's also an independent brokerage since 1944 in BC. Independent, owned by a woman. It's now the biggest business in BC owned by a woman.
oh,
100, yeah, we have over 1,100 agents and 20 offices now.
amazing.
Yeah, so she bought the existing brokerage in the 90s, and it was nice. So we're celebrating 80 years now. And so I thought, oh, I like the feel of that. And so I called and got an appointment with Pat Place, who is the managing broker in the West Van office. And I sat down with her, and we laughed our heads off for an hour and chatted. And that was it. I had
Wow.
another one booked that afternoon, and I canceled it. Actually,
Well,
no, I did go, but it didn't go well. It didn't go well. That's right.
you weren't
Yes.
laughing for a full hour.
Well,
Uh,
No, you know, when you just really connect with someone.
You know when you know.
You
Yep.
know when you know, exactly. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was just one of those moments where I thought, you know, this vibe of this woman, when I've come from this sort of more male-dominated kind of industry, I thought, "Oh, this is where I belong." So,
So you had some help around branding and marketing with family members. Then you got you got your license. You got a great brokerage to join. And then how did you go about building your business? What was it like? How was it going out and finding clients? Do you have any? Do you remember those days 9 years ago? And how did you start prospecting?
mainly it was through connections with referrals, and that continues to be a very big part of my business for sure. Um, you know, it's that first person that connects you with one person that connects you with the next one. We also have a lot of connections. I met some people that had connections in the mortgage industry, so I had some referrals through that. And just one thing led to another in that way. Everybody tries everything at that point, right?
Sure.
Oh, now someone in my building is doing a renovation, so you can probably hear a drill right now. Yeah, so door knocking, tried it.
Wow.
Wow, yeah, it's that's an interesting thing to do. Yeah, not something for me. Yeah, very difficult. You can knock on one door and there's nobody there, and then you get all excited and to try to the next one and there's nobody there, and then it's a very draining sort of thing
Yes.
to do. Absolutely, and I think we're a very saturated market with realtors here in North Vancouver, Vancouver, really. So it's not really somewhere where people really appreciate that. I mean, 9 years ago, maybe, but not so much. And we also had a big glut of foreign buyers, and there were a lot of homes that weren't really occupied. So it wasn't like a neighborhood where you were just folksy with everybody. It's a big city, small city. So
Right.
yeah, yeah, very different in that way. So definitely, and also, taking all of the courses. McDonald Realty is so um, agent friendly and trying to, ensure agent success. And that was where we had I had the connection with Mark Winter, who's the agent development director, and taking advantage of everything that the brokerage offered as far as how connecting with people, and the next steps in the journey, and really just making sure that you were really taking care of people and connecting with people. And
Yeah, I think the connection is really it doesn't really get talked about as much. We're talking about really building a business by referral, and how do we do that? Well, you have to know a lot of people if you're going to
right,
do that. And in order to know a lot of people, you have to meet a lot of people, and then you have to develop relationships with them, and then deepen those relationships, right? So it's a process, but I think ultimately it's the easiest path, or rather the gentlest path, because it's rocky at first, because these are people that may or may not need your services for years and
right.
years, and you sort of, as an agent, are waiting, hopefully eagerly in the wings, but providing value along the way, so that when they are ready, of course, that they pick up the phone and contact you. And but it all starts with meeting people. And I always said, like, I learned this from a business seminar that I was at like 20 years ago. It just blew my mind, and it's so silly, but it's going to sound silly, but it really blew my mind. It's like, if you want to double your income, double your leads. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, how do I do that? Well, I'd have to meet twice as many people as I already have, and if I assume the same ratios as far as meeting to actual close, whatever those, as they funnel through, if I just meet twice as many people, in theory, I should have twice as much business. And again, it's a really simple way to look at it, but it is true. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your network, and how do you engage with your network, your sphere of influence? How do you stay front of mind, and how do you stay in communication?
Well, this sort of leads into my love of creativity and doing these things. I jumped into, so 9 years ago. I mean, Facebook was sort of the one to start
Sure.
on, and I was comfortable using that. I actually helped my sister-in-law prior to that, building a skincare brand, and my brother was also helping us with marketing. So we jumped into Facebook fairly quickly. So I was quite comfortable with that platform, and that's sort of where you started sort of building something. And then from that, it's a matter of building out who you're talking to, and that over time, then you jump to Instagram. And so that's sort of where I got the connection of wanting to do more. I always had the good luck of how things came together. I felt comfortable speaking, but video is something that obviously, is really forefront now. So that sort of I was doing it and I was feeling okay with it, but really it wasn't till I heard Kim Ritberg on your podcast that I decided to really jump into the video space. And not just video as far as, I mean, everyone's doing walking around homes and zooming around, it's not that. It's more about the connection piece, right? So it's the connection of those people. Yes, you're top of mind because of whatever you're selling at the moment, but there's value in, even if they're not interested in that home or that area, there's value in learning about you. And I must say, here in BC, we've had so many, well, we've had regulatory changes, not like the big regulatory changes that you've had there in the US, but in BC, housing is a big issue, and there's been a lot of regulatory changes, and especially even with the real estate business. When I got into the business in 2015, it was a little bit more of the Wild West than than when I actually got in. A lot of new things came in at that time, and a lot of agents were going, "Oh my God, we're being heavily regulated." And I'd come from 25 years in the insurance industry, which is very regulated, and so that didn't phase me. I didn't have any problem with that. And it was new to me. So change is easy when you're not stuck in an old habit, right?
Yeah.
So from the changes that we've had to go through, communicating those changes to the public so they understand, because the media, when things change, they're all, oh, this scary thing is happening because
Sure.
realtors are terrible people and they have
Right.
to do this and they have to do that,
Sure.
not understanding that it's the industry needing to change
Mhm.
because it's a different world than it was 25 years ago, right? So
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, we're going through here in the U.S. obviously a lot of change right now. We are literally, well, we were at the precipice and we just crossed over, and we're now going to see what happens. But it's ultimately, I think it'll be a good thing for our industry. I hope. I'm not totally sure yet what will shake out. But what I do know is the top agents I've talked to seem to think, this what will be good for the industry now is the agents who really take it seriously and really this is their, the best agents will thrive.
right.
And maybe the weaker agents won't, and maybe they'll wither and go away, and that means more market share for the top agents. And so I
Absolutely.
think this is like a great time to sharpen skills. So you talked about video. Let's talk about video. So this is a newer thing for you. How do you approach video content for your sphere?
So with, yeah, I mean, and that's a big part of it too. People think, well, you're going on Instagram and doing these videos to try to, obviously it's great if you're capturing leads that are just out of the blue, but mainly it is keeping top of mind. It's people that you are connected with in the periphery, and making sure that they really understand your value and you are the one they reach out to. So it's you know really a combination of the personal and the educational piece, and then of course your neighborhood and your, where you work. So it's a matter of, location, personality, and education are the
S-
pieces that I
So
see.
when you're doing videos, are you doing short form videos like a minute or two? Are they longer form? Like what works best for you?
They're usually, yeah, usually in, no more than 3 minutes or so. You know, um, there are, obviously when you're, if you have a listing and you're doing something a little bit longer, there's sometimes that falls into it, but most of it is shorter. YouTube as a channel, I haven't really put enough content there, and that's part of what you're learning is, to figure out where your audience is. So where is best for you to put your content. I think LinkedIn can be very valuable if you have a lot of business connections. I think that's somewhere where you can really establish your credibility. LinkedIn is important for that because I think people will see you in the Facebook and Instagram, but if they're a business person, they'll probably check you out on LinkedIn, right?
That's a really great point that doesn't get brought up enough with my guests, and I LinkedIn never gets talked about. So I'm glad that we're talking about it now because it is kind of the forgotten social media channel. Um, we know people don't go to LinkedIn for fun. Maybe
No,
I think fun is Facebook and Instagram,
absolutely.
but they go to LinkedIn to see what's going on. And it might not be fun, but but it's interesting. And so, and again, LinkedIn is fun as well. But I think there's a large untapped potential because we don't think about LinkedIn as something that we're perusing, that the average consumer is perusing every day. But anyone who's in business is probably on LinkedIn way
Absolutely.
more than you'd think. And I think that's a huge opportunity. I mean, we stream this podcast to LinkedIn and we get
Okay.
lots of attention there. And I never would have guessed that before starting this. So, what I do, I recommend for video for people who are listening, of course, is put content on LinkedIn as well. It's a great place. Maybe make the content a little bit more professional or post content that
Yeah.
is more professional there
Hmm.
and a little bit more buttoned up maybe. And then you can be a little sillier, I think, with the YouTube
Absolutely. Yeah.
and also Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, of course, too. Um,
I don't
so
think it's necessarily where you sell a property. It's more where you establish your credibility.
Yes, I think that's fair. And I think the thing that we also should always be mindful of is everybody's going to Google you, no matter
Absolutely.
no matter how long you've been in the business, how many awards or non-awards you have. They're going to do a quick search just to people do that, and it's really important to have a good sense of what comes up. Everybody should Google themselves and get a sense of like what's showing up, and is this the sort of brand I want to project. I want to go back to your brand because you had some help around branding, and a lot of people really don't get that help. Tell us what your brand is and how you sort of arrived at that.
Um, it was more just wanting to have just a clean look. I wanted to have, everybody wants to have your nameplate, so it's very clear. I wanted to be just straightforward. I actually never even got a headshot done. I had a photo. Seems ridiculous. It seems ridiculous. I just got my first headshot done a month ago. I've been using a photo from a Christmas party, which I just really liked the engage, like just how I felt I came across. And I think that's really what you're looking for because taking a photo is an unnatural experience, and I felt I just had something that worked. I said to friends, I said, is it wrong for me to do this? I know this is really strange, but what do you think? And they're like, no, that's you when you're at your best connecting with people and happy and engaged. I'm like, okay, because if I now go and try to get a headshot, I know, and now I'm confident in who I am as a realtor and I can get a photo taken because I feel, in the beginning you're like, well, who am I? And I'm like, everybody's got the hands crossed pose and all of those things. And it's sort of like, no, I don't want to do that right now. I need to be me, whoever I am at that point in time. And that's sort of what I ran with. So I think it was, maybe people felt that, that
Authenticity.
ease, the
Yeah.
ease, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's true. Like, there's a particular push these days for style where headshots maybe aren't as in vogue as they used to be, where it's more now photographs or photography capturing somebody doing something. I
Right.
think sort of like catching them doing something that they're passionate about
Yeah.
is always more interesting to me, because then I get to learn a little bit about the person inside of that photo.
Right.
So if anyone out there is listening and has a look, everyone probably has a headshot. There's nothing wrong with headshots. They're great. They're useful. And I would also encourage you to have, get some action shots of you doing, whether it's real estate activities or non-real estate activities, whatever someone's passionate about. We want to connect. Consumers want to connect with their agent. They want to know, what does their agent do? What is their agent into? And that would be a great place to do that. I wanted to. You're a very creative person. I wanted to talk about creativity and how that has played into your business. Can you give us some examples of how you've used creativity to build your business?
I think obviously, creating your own content, everybody plays around with in the beginning, whether you get someone else to do stuff for you or you do it yourself, or, can you do it yourself? Not everybody has that creative bent, right? You'd like to not pay someone to do it, but you're not that comfortable doing it yourself. So from my perspective, luckily I enjoyed the process of using different programs to create content. Obviously, that can be a little bit of a runaway train time wise, because you're perfecting and you want to change things, and you always want to, you see a new thing that you can use, and you're sort of wanting to use every new tool that comes along. But so yeah, I really enjoy that piece of the process, and so I do like to develop my own things. But I've also always taken courses. My daughter calls me the self-help, queen, because every book, not so much books. I don't read. I know it sounds terrible. I don't read novels, and when I did read, it was always self-help books, like
Yeah,
something, or autobiographies. Now I have Audible, so I don't even actually have to read them. I used to
sure.
skim them really, but Audible has been really great. So I'm always picking up the next thing, about how pushing forward, and creativity, and new things to do. So so that part of it really excites me. I love that piece of it.
It's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it too much until you just said this, but I've been doing the show many years, and one of the real key personality traits or characteristics that I've noticed, but I hadn't really uh, congealed this thought until just now, is this sort of lifetime of learning attribute that seems to be very consistent among top performers. There's this willingness and excitement to sort of learn something new and immerse. You talked about when you first got into your brokerage at McDonald, doing all of their training. I mean, as sort of rudimentary as that sounds, we have 800 agents at our company here. I can tell you, a lot of them have never come to training programs, and
Absolutely.
that's not to say that there's anything wrong with those people
No.
who haven't. Maybe they're busy, they haven't. But as a result of not going through and continually learning, their business is only going to grow at a certain percentage. And so it's funny, when I first got into this business, um, I asked a realtor in my hometown who was one of the top realtors there, and I didn't know anything about real estate. I said, his name was Brian. I said, Brian, why are you like the number 7 highest producing agent in Peoria, Illinois, of all places? And he goes, he looked at me and he goes, I cannot tell you other than I'm usually the first one here in the morning. And he's like, I don't come at 6 a.m. He's like, I get here at 8 a.m. He goes, and I leave at like 6 p.m., pretty normal day. I answer my phone, I make my calls. Like, he was just like, you just do the thing.
Yeah.
And I go, well, yeah, there's more to it than that. And he goes, well, yeah, but not really. He's like, it's really mostly that.
Yeah, I
He's
mean, you just have to be showing up all the time, and not, I don't mean on Instagram and Facebook, I
right.
mean in life, right? And I'd come from going to an office every day.
Yep.
So, I told myself actually that I was going to start going to the gym at 7 in the morning, because I wanted to make sure I kept up that routine of getting
Yep.
up early and being up and dressed and ready to roll at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that's changed a little bit because real estate kind of slip into maybe 9:30, but basically, I don't. I'm ready to roll. If somebody called, I'd be ready anytime to go somewhere at 9 o'clock. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I am. Like, yeah, I'm not in my jammies until 11 o'clock, even though I could be working because I don't have anywhere to go. But what if? What if
Yeah.
someone calls and I need to go? I got to be ready.
Well,
So,
getting in physical shape, this has been a huge thing for me, a huge hurdle for me to get over. I really was not an exercise person up until about those. Now I'm 4 years in. Prior to that, I would sporadically, I would do it, I wouldn't do it, and I'm speaking about this now. Again, this is a real estate podcast. We're talking about exercise, but I will tell you the only thing that really ultimately got me to do it was eventually I just said, do I want to have more energy? Do I want to have more energy to do certain things in my life or stay up a little later to be able to do other things, spend time with my partner or explore hobbies or work on my business? um, I am going to need to have more energy than I currently have. And the only way I knew to get more energy was to work out. And I thought, well, that's a bummer. And that means I have to, really,
have to
uh,
go.
I have to do some really hard things to get this result. But it worked out quite well. And so now I have a routine as well. And I would really encourage everyone on the show. Again, I'm not here to tell you to how to exercise or what to do, but if you are struggling with having the energy to do enough stuff, exercise will really help you out. And if nothing else, it'll help alleviate some stress and pressure along the way too. So I still have stress and pressure,
Oh,
still
yeah.
have problems.
Yeah.
My life is in no way perfect, but
And when you
I,
say work out, you don't actually, it's just a matter of, at a certain time to step out the door
yep,
with those shoes on and you're doing it.
that's exactly
And
right.
sometimes I don't get to the gym and I just go for a walk, but I tell myself even if I just walk down the block and back, you clear your head a little bit. I have had we have a beautiful seawall just down from where I am, and I start walking on that seawall, and the whole way to the next little village, I am wrapped up in my head with all the things that are swirling. But usually by the time I'm sort of halfway back, I realize that things have started to fall off a little bit and
Yeah.
that you're actually a little bit clearer.
Yeah,
And
just taking a walk is very very helpful because what we're really talking about is like priming the mind so that it can be useful when it's needed. So clearing your mind, meditating, doing exercise or whatever helps, reduce activation is really important because then we can take that energy that we've sort of captured and harnessed and then actually apply it to whatever the activity is for the day. So it's no fun if you're anxious to then pick up the phone and start calling people, right?
mm-mm,
That's like the worst time to call people is if you're scared. So you want to get to a place where you're not scared. So you want to get rid of that fear, and it's not just ignore it. It's like, well, okay, let's get it out. Whatever the fear is, let's process it and let's get you back to center. And now let's tackle our day. I mean, I have fear too. Like it, and we don't talk about fear enough, I think,
no,
as realtors. We all are afraid. Everyone's got fear. It happens all the time. And the question isn't how do I avoid fear? The question is how do I cope with it? So I always think for me, if something is scary and healthy for me, then it's probably a good idea. And all I have to have is just summon up the courage to do it, and it'll probably work out in the way that it should. Now, again, I'm sort of speaking generally here and a little bit sort of esoterically, but the point is that what we really ultimately want to do in life is be able to do our job effectively or more effectively than maybe we had been before, and that requires really priming oneself, like getting oneself in alignment so that you do have the energy to do the things you want. So okay, if I want to have the energy to make a certain amount of calls, which would it net me a certain amount of income, I need to go to bed at a certain time, I need to exercise a certain amount per week, I need to eat a certain way, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be, pretty dialed in. And I have to then also look, okay, well, what other parts of my life am I neglecting? Because I want to make sure all of my life is doing well. So I always say, start at the beginning of whatever the like, for example, when I started realizing that if I just got an extra hour of sleep at night, my whole day changed. Like, as a not, I had more energy. I was like, oh, that's cool to know. So now, I mean, I don't always get enough sleep. The last night I didn't, but my I know that if I get an extra hour of sleep, I'm probably going to be able to work longer the following day. And so this cause and effect thing, I know it's kind of seems simple, but I think often can be the elusive obvious. Is like, we look for, like, where's the next lead? It's like, okay, did you sleep enough last night? Because if you're out looking for leads, I want you fully rested, because if you're going up to somebody and you're not at your best, that's not going to project well when you talk to them, when you communicate with them. We want you at your best. So we need to take care of ourselves and do things for us so that we can, anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a
No, I mean,
tangent,
I
but
agree with you, and it doesn't have to be a workout. We talked about the fact that we're both tennis fans,
yep.
so and for me, I play tennis 3 or 4 times a week, and I play doubles. So if you don't show up, you're letting down 3 people. So you show up. And it's structured because we have to book a court, and you're showing up, and that is structure. And when I have gone away, or in the summer, like right now, a few of our people in our normal groups aren't around and we're not playing as much, and I feel it. I feel this sort of laziness that creeps in. I love that structure. Like, we're trying to find a 4th person for 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. We always play on Friday mornings, and we're
ha-
trying to find someone, and we can't find anyone. And I'm like,
have
I
you
need it. I
have
need
you
it.
found clientele through the passion of tennis? Has that ever happened?
It has, yes, it has. I must also say, the tennis club that I belong to, there's a lot of realtors that belong to that tennis club. So there's a lot of people top of mind there. But yeah, it's a great community of people, that's for sure. And so yeah, it does, but it would be great to have more of that.
So, one last question about, if you were to be mentoring, let's say a new agent came to you and said, I'm brand new, I just got my license, what do I do? What might you suggest to them?
As I said, take every opportunity to learn. Any, seminars, what your brokerage offers, look at new technologies. Every time you listen, even to, a podcast, you're not absorbing everything from one thing. You're never going to get everything from one place, but you pick up small nuggets, and you just absorb as much as you can. And every talk you go to, there'll only be 1 or 2 small things that will resonate with you, because there's so many places to go. And so, just being open as you can to learn as much as you can in the beginning, and go to the office.
Yeah.
We're at our office, we're trying to get people back to the office. I have an office, and we're just trying to get people back in. It's such an energizer. It's you get to hear what's going on, because in the beginning you're so isolated. You think you're alone in this silo, and
Yep.
everybody else is doing stuff, and I'm not doing stuff, and I don't even, and you're looking at the stats and what's selling every day, but how does that actually work in the real world? When you go into the office, you hear about how that deal came together or didn't come together. I think being in the office and hearing what everybody else is doing is really valuable. Just being there.
100% agree. Yeah, we most of our agents don't come in either, and I would love it if they were. Oh, well, we'd have to have a much bigger office, but yes, I 100% agree. For me personally, I do not work well at home, and I'm fortunate enough to have a place to go every day, because it's an accountability thing for me. Like,
Yeah.
if I get here, I'm going to work. If I'm at home, I don't know. I might watch TV. I might, do other things,
I
because there's
actually sometimes decide that dishes need to be done instead of work. Or
sure,
dusting. I'm like, oh, that's dusty, I should get to that. It's like, no, 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 I got to get out of here.
right.
So,
Yeah. Well, there's always unfinished projects at home
at
too.
home.
So that's the other thing about working at home is you start looking around and you're like, maybe I could start on this or that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of get out, clear your mind, maybe go to an office if you have one, or go somewhere that's your dedicated workspace
Yeah,
and just get to work. And the good news about this industry is, well, number one, everyone's got to live somewhere. So they're going to most likely need a realtor. And really, the way that I've seen successful agents over the years build their business is, really by demonstrating compassion and care, like, and competency, of course. So it's like, learn your market, learn how to satisfy the needs of your clients, and demonstrate that you care about them in many different ways as you can. And I think as a real estate agent, we're really lucky because clients will come to us with all sorts of questions, and they need help, or they need referrals, or they need guidance. And that's where we can be really of value in between the sales. And so that hopefully, they would think about us on that next sale. Does that happen for you a lot, where you're trying to stay in communication with your clients in between sales?
absolutely. I mean, that's the main thing to do when, you've I mean, we all have those periods where we had, a bunch of listings, and when those are all on your mind and you're just so wrapped up, and then you have that elation because things have finally wrapped up, and then, oh, now what? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Summer's come along, and of course, I'm sure everywhere this year has been particularly tough. I know here in Canada, the real estate market's been very difficult. So, at any point where you have sort of that small, you have to be doing it all the time, but that's a really great place to just put focus, because you need to feel like you have focus all the time
Yeah.
of on something. If it's if it's your listings or your buyers, that's great when you have that, but when you have those small moments, you need to fill that with stuff that keeps you energized.
Mhm.
And I find, for me, the creative part of the Instagram and those things is part of that. It gives me that creative outlet where I feel like I'm still connecting with people, and of course on the personal level as well. So it's a matter of keeping yourself energized. That's your job. It's
That's true. That's a really good point. You definitely have to. So maybe back to the exercise thing too. Like, keep yourself energized through taking care of your physical body as well. Um,
and
I
I
wanted to,
put a lot of energy into my clients too. I mean, I think,
yeah.
I noticed in your, some of the questions that you put out that you might ask, is what funny things happen in real estate. Well, with my clients, I think a lot of funny things happen, and not just because they're funny, is because that's sort of how I roll. We get to know each other. We're relaxed. We try to, I try to have very open and transparent with my clients, and ultimately, that creates, I don't like, it sounds funny to say a fun journey, but it is. We have a good time. I make sure I give them all the information. They're informed, but it's a relaxed atmosphere, and I think, connecting with your clients in that way, and then feeling that comfort with you, is really important. And so our funny moments are all the time, because you know
I think that's perfectly stated. And one last question. If you could go back to yourself as 9 years ago when you got your license, what would you tell yourself to do differently if you had to do it all over again?
um I think whatever, well, I don't know. I I feel like I learned so much. I don't know what I would do differently. I don't know if I would really do much differently. I just
W-
had to, I felt like I I did the journey how I needed it to be. I
Yeah.
remember sitting in the office the first time I sat down, and I met a woman, and I said, "Oh, how long have you been?" She said, "Well, 5 years." I basically now feel like I know what I'm doing. I went, "Oh my God, okay, 5 years. That's a long time." But I remember feeling around that 5 year mark, going, "Oh my God, I think I know what she's talking about." I think it all just settled in, and so from that perspective, my journey for me, I think, was okay. I think at that point, focusing a little bit too much on print advertising, because that was when a big switch was happening, and thinking that you've got to have your face in papers and magazines and all that stuff. But at that time, that was old thinking, and that transition was happening. So I probably spent some money I shouldn't have spent. That will be one thing. And controlling your costs is important, so you don't have the stress. That's
Yes.
that's important.
Controlling your costs. That's a great piece of advice for new
Yeah.
agents. That is a great piece of advice. Well, Julia, thank you so much for coming on. I really loved hearing your story and how you are really growing your sizable business today. And it's really, truly incredible. So on behalf of the audience, thank you so much for being our neighbor to the north and being on this podcast. We are very
Well,
much appreciate your time and want everybody to follow Julia on Instagram. You can find her at juliastauffer.ca. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Also, that's her website, juliastauffer.ca. So reach out to her. And on behalf of Julie and myself, we want to thank the audience for sticking around till the end of the show. We appreciate you. And one last thing we ask is just tell a friend. Think of one other agent that could benefit from hearing this conversation with Julia. Send them a link to our podcast, which you can find really anywhere. But if you just want to send them to our website, it's keepingitrealpod.com, or they can pull up any podcast app, search for Keeping It Real, and hit that subscribe button. Please let other agents know about the show. We appreciate it. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Julia.